Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Diri Nashtaprayeshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Seva Bhagavati Uttam Shloke Bhaktir Bhagavati Naistike. So continuing with the discussion on Srimad Bhagavad Gita, chapter 3, Karma Yoga, text 25 on. So karma in Krishna consciousness, which is the 5th chapter actually, but this is Karma Yoga. But basically Karma Yoga can only happen if you work in Krishna consciousness or for the pleasure of Krishna. That's Krishna already said that Yagyarthat Karmano Anyatra Lokoyam Karma Bandhana. Yagya means Krishna, Vishnu. So karma has to be done. Nobody can sit without doing any karma, but it should be done for the pleasure of Krishna. That's all. Text 25. Sakta karmanya vidvanso yatha kurvanti bharata kuryad vidvans tatha sakta chikirshur lok sangraham. As the ignorant perform their duties with attachment to results, the learned may similarly act, but without attachment, for the sake of leading people on the right path. A person in Krishna consciousness and a person not in Krishna consciousness are differentiated by different desires. A Krishna conscious person does not do anything which is not conducive to development of Krishna consciousness. He may even act exactly like the ignorant person who is too much attached to material activities. But one is engaged in such activities for the satisfaction of his sense gratification, who is the ignorant person, whereas the other is engaged for the satisfaction of Krishna. Therefore, the Krishna conscious person is required to show the people how to act and how to engage the results of action for the purpose of Krishna consciousness. Means everybody has to perform their duties. It's just how to do it, with what consciousness, with what mood one performs his duties. And this is basically Krishna is telling Arjun. So Arjun doesn't run away from the war. He has to fight, but he has to fight in Krishna consciousness to show the people how even the war can be had by being conscious of Krishna or as a bhakti, as a service to Krishna. Na buddhi bhedam janayet jnanam karma sangina joshet sarva karmani vidvan yukta samacharan. So as not to disrupt the minds of ignorant men attached to the fruitive results of prescribed duties, a learned person should not induce them to stop work. Rather, by working in the spirit of devotion, he should engage them in all sorts of activities for the gradual development of Krishna consciousness. So, see, this is one of the shlokas very important for us to understand. Not to disrupt the minds of ignorant men attached to fruitive results of prescribed duties. There are so many people doing, like recently we had Navaratras. And so many people fasting, praying to Durga Ma for various material benedictions. We don't stop them. Krishna himself said, a learned person should not induce them to stop work. Do not stop. Rather, by working in the spirit of devotion, he should engage them in all sorts of activities for the gradual development of Krishna consciousness. It's very gradual, this process. Just because we know what's the ultimate truth, of course, they will say they know the ultimate truth. Everybody else will say. But we say based on the scriptures, not on our own thinking. But at the same time, we cannot disrupt them from doing the fruitive activities. So, but slowly, somehow engage. Somehow. Not to ask them to stop, but basically ask them to add Krishna consciousness. Vedasya sarveraham eva vedya. That is the end of all Vedic rituals. All rituals, all performances of sacrifices, and everything that is put into the Vedas, including all direction for material activities, are meant for understanding Krishna, who is the ultimate goal of life. But because the conditioned souls do not know anything beyond sense gratification, they study the Vedas to that end. But through fruitive activities and sense gratification regulated by the Vedic rituals, one is gradually elevated to Krishna consciousness. So it's a slow progress, but it is there. Therefore, a realized soul in Krishna consciousness should not disturb others in their activities or understanding, but he should act by showing how the results of all work can be dedicated to the service of Krishna. So we have to try to preach by example first. Preaching, knowledge comes much later. Setting the example, that's a great way of preaching. The learned Krishna conscious person may act in such a way that the ignorant person working for sense gratification may learn how to act and how to behave. Although the ignorant man is not to be disturbed in his activities, a slightly developed Krishna conscious person may directly be engaged in the service of the Lord without waiting for other Vedic formulas. For this fortunate man, there is no need to follow the Vedic rituals because by direct Krishna consciousness, one can have all the results one would otherwise derive from following one's prescribed duties. So bhakti has everything, but people are not ready to learn. So those who are little advanced, they can be engaged in. But how do we know who's little advanced and who's not? So we preach, but at the same time, we understand how everybody or anybody is reacting. And then we preach accordingly. We engage them accordingly. Prakrite kriye manani gunah karmani sarvasha ahankara vimulatma kartahamiti manyate. The spirit soul, bewildered by the influence of false ego, thinks himself the doer of activities that are in actuality carried out by the three modes of material nature. So two persons, one in Krishna consciousness and the other in material consciousness, working on the same level, may appear to be working on the same platform, but there is a wide gulf of difference in their respective positions. The person in material consciousness is convinced by false ego that he is a doer of everything. He does not know that the mechanism of the body is produced by the material nature, which works under the supervision of the Supreme Lord. So it's not like we are doing everything. There's no way. We think this is a false ego. But everything in our body is controlled by, of course, not directly by Krishna, but through his material energy. The materialistic person has no knowledge that ultimately he is under the control of Krishna. A person in false ego takes all credit for doing everything independently. And that is a symptom of his nescience. So he takes credit. But this is his ignorance. He does not know that this gross and subtle body is a creation of material nature under the order of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And as such, his bodily and mental activities should be engaged in the service of Krishna, in Krishna consciousness. Even if somebody wants to, like 99.99% of population, they all are in this ignorance, thinking I am the doer, I am the creator of my own destiny and this and that. Although it's not the truth, but Krishna still lets them think this way and work that way. Of course, Krishna through his material energy is still working. This is a law. But he still lets them act in their ignorance because this is their independence. This is their choice. Krishna does not interfere in everybody's choice or desire. So we think we are the doer, but the material modes of material nature are the doer. But we only desire that I want to do this. And when the desire becomes strong, even at the desired level, there are three stages: thinking, feeling, and willing. First, we think of something. If it is really worth it, then we feel like doing it. And then we really are willing, thinking, feeling, and willing. We are willing to do it. Strong desire. Yes, I want to do it. If it is a sinful activity, mind, this all things happen in the mind. Mind should be controlled by the intelligence, actually. If it is a sinful activity, intelligence should say, no, 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 don't do it. Don't do it. Paramatma sitting within the heart also guides. Don't do it. It's not like Krishna wants people to go to prison or get killed or get punished. He doesn't want that. So he guides. But the soul says, no, I want to do it. I have to do it. Then the three modes of nature they get activated, and the person works accordingly. And then not works. Three modes of nature make him work, whatever his desire was. So, because based on this shloka, sometimes people say, then if three modes of nature are making somebody work, why does people get punished? Why do they get punished? Well, they get punished because of the desire, nothing else. The sinful desire. And desire, how can we control the desires? By having strong, purified intelligence and mind. Still, even if we have strong, purified intelligence and mind, because of our sanskaras from previous so many lifetimes, the desires or the wrong desires. Wrong desires means desires that take us away from Krishna consciousness. They get generated in the mind. Either they are the desires that are deep rooted in our heart, or now the desires because of new association or new experiences we have, we develop some more desires. This is very game played at very subtle level. But based on those desires, if we want to act, again, want, it is our want. Krishna is not putting that want in us. If we want to act on those desires, Krishna will, or material nature will make arrangements for us to fulfill those sinful desires, lusty desires. But those devotees, now devotees mean those who are struggling or they are neophytes, when we come into Krishna consciousness, when we start devotional service. And as Krishna said earlier, second chapter, Ye yathamam prapadyante tasatheva bhajamyaham. That as they surrender unto me, I reward them accordingly. Not in second chapter, this comes later, fourth, I guess. Now, when we are trying to surrender to Krishna, to the instructions of Krishna, but we still have those sanskaras, those inherent desires, they are there. And sometimes they just come up in front of us and we want to do something. Now it depends how much surrendered we are. If we are fully surrendered, then Krishna may intervene. Even if the desire is there, Krishna might not let us fulfill it. So modes of nature, okay, you stay on the side, let me take care of. Or even if he lets us fulfill it, but then he frustrates us in such a way, so much of frustration he will give. Either first not by fulfilling, then the frustration, and if we fulfill, but still it becomes greed, then he again frustrates us. Why? So that we, first of all, our mind should not go towards those desires, and secondly, there's nothing left but to take shelter of Krishna. So that happens in the case of devotees. But from outwardly, it looks like a regular, normal person. Okay, even if a regular person, he has some desire and material mode of nature act, it's not likely that he will fulfill all his desires to the fullest extent. Not going to happen. Even if we look at our lives right now, looking back, how many of our desires that we had were completely fulfilled? Hardly, maybe 5-10%. How many were never fulfilled completely? Never fulfilled at all. Very big number. And how many were partially fulfilled? Huge number. Partially fulfilled could be huge, like 60-70%. Because we have so many desires. Now, in that case, also person gets frustrated, but then he gets into either more desires, or I want to work hard to fulfill my desires, or he gets into depression and frustration and all those things. But in devotional service or devotional circle, and devotee is trying. So if Krishna is not going to let him fulfill his desire, he's going to frustrate. But if the devotee still remains in the right association, then he understands it was Krishna who was trying not to fulfill my desires. So let me surrender and let me not get frustrated. Let me get more devotionally surrender. That is what Krishna wants. And moreover, like Bhagavatam also says, regarding our sinful or desires to make more money or get more prestige, more name, fame, more followers, and this or that. Bhagavatam says, we never desire for any bad times to happen in our lives. Like if somebody is running a business, he never desires that his business runs into a loss. But it happens. We are living healthy life properly. We never desire that we get sick, but we get sick. Nobody asks for all these things. So if the bad time comes without asking, why won't good time will also come without asking? Why we have to run around and go to temples and go to churches and mosques and go to this Baba and that Baba and ask for, आप कुछ कर दीजिए so ये अच्छा time आ जाए and that अच्छा time. Why? It will come on its own also. So all we have to do is serve Krishna without any desires, without any expectations. He will give whatever he wants to give at his own time. But this is what people don't understand. Even if materially thinking, things will happen on their own. Of course, we have to work hard, but we should not have so much of longing for it that it becomes a greed. And if the greed's definitely not always going to be fulfilled, then it leads to frustration. We do our duty, work, and enjoy. Why lament? But these material modes of nature, And they work in such a subtle way, such a subtle way. It's also that they are called guna, right? Three modes of nature, triguna, trigunyamai. So guna also means rajju. Rajju means ropes. So we are bound up with these three modes of nature. So these three ropes have completely entangled us. We're not free. Of course, we don't see those ropes. They're very subtle. We don't see them, but according to scriptures, they have bound us. And we work according to those three ropes. Whichever rope is more stronger, more prominent, then he pulls, that rope pulls, and the other rope lets go for some time, and the other rope pulls, and the other ropes let go sometime. And these things go on. And we think we are very independent and we are the cause of our destiny, and sometimes we cry, lament, and sometimes we are very happy. It's nonsense, actually. And they can only act on the body and the material subtle body, material gross body and material subtle body. They don't act on the spirit soul. Spirit soul is beyond them. But because the spirit soul is inside this body in the material world, we start thinking, I am this body. Our consciousness becomes, I'm this body. Then, although the spirit soul is Satchidananda, eternally, he starts lamenting. He becomes ignorant. So it becomes Asat, Achit, and Nirananda. He forgets everything. And this is what is said. The ignorant man forgets that the supreme personality of Godhead is known as Rishikesha, or the master of the senses of the material body. For due to his long misuse of the senses and sense gratification, he is factually bewildered by the false ego, which makes him forget his eternal relationship with Krishna. So his relationship is eternal, but we forget. And factually bewildered by the false ego. False ego. Ego means, who am I? Identity. False ego means wrongly thinking, who am I? But this is how Krishna has made this material world, material creation. And this is how we are going on. So since the beginning of time, this is how it's been. Fighting. Everywhere. Well, of course, Kali Yuga is the age of quarrel and hypocrisy. So it just fight goes on. Every day, whole day, people are fighting. Just to get some money or some property, steal some property, cheat somebody out of this, and cheat somebody out of that. For what? Sometimes we see videos of two neighbors, and the ladies are just cleaning their house, the floor on the house, and they collect all the dust and put it in the other neighbor's house, in the front of other neighbor's house. And the fighting will start. Why? Well, this is how the material world is. Tattva vittu mahabahu guna karma vibhagaya guna guneshu vartanta iti matva na sajjate. But one who is in knowledge of the absolute truth, O mighty armed, does not engage himself in the senses and sense gratification, knowing well the differences between work in devotion and work for fruitive results. Duryodhan wanted, as he said in first chapter, all these warriors have assembled to fight on my behalf. His behalf was he wanted to be the king. He wanted to be the enjoyer of Hastinapur and the whole world actually. Whole world was under Hastinapur. Arjun didn't want to fight for himself. So he was confused what to do. He cannot run away, could not run away, and didn't want to fight. So Krishna is telling him, one who is in knowledge of the absolute truth himself, Krishna, Almighty Arm, does not engage himself in the senses and sense gratification, knowing well the differences between work in devotion and work for fruitive results. Means he's telling Arjun indirectly, work in devotion, not work for fruitive results. The knower of the absolute truth is convinced of his awkward position in material association. He knows that he is part and parcel of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, and that his position should not be in the material creation. He knows his real identity as part and parcel of the Supreme, whose eternal bliss and knowledge. And he realizes that somehow or other he is entrapped in the material conception of life. In his pure state of existence, he is meant to dovetail his activities in devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna. So in his pure state, he is meant to do this for Krishna. But now we have forgotten. He therefore engages himself in the activities of Krishna consciousness and becomes naturally unattached to the activities of the material senses, which are all circumstantial and temporary. So this is what our senses are, circumstantial and temporary, and all the activities we perform to please the senses also. What's the end result? Nothing. He knows that his material condition of life is under the supreme control of the Lord. Consequently, he is not disturbed by all kinds of material reactions, which he considers to be the mercy of the Lord. He is not disturbed by all kinds of material reactions. They will come anyway. According to Srimad Bhagavatam, one who knows the absolute truth in three different features, namely Brahman, Paramatma, and the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is called Tattvavit. For he knows also his own factual position in relationship with the Supreme. So that is why this knowledge, but knowing Brahman, Paramatma, Supreme Personality of Godhead, or Bhagavan, is Tattvavit, and it's important. Then we can know how to do our activities, in what consciousness. So those who don't know, they think that the body is all in all, and body means my body and the extensions of my body, my family, my children, and this and that, and then my community and my city and my state and my country, and this my goes on and on and on. And this my is only related to body, nothing else, which we are not to begin with. But this Maya is so strong, so strong. That's why we have to take shelter of Krishna. And Prabhupada said at one place, if any times Maya is testing you and it's hard to, and the test is so hard, you cannot get away, just take shelter of Krishna. Pray to Krishna, please, Krishna, take this Maya away. Don't let me go into Maya. And Krishna will protect. But our prayers have to be very sincere. Prakritir guna samudha sajjante guna karmasu tan Krishna vido mandan Krishnan vinna vichalaya. Bewildered by the modes of material nature, the ignorant fully engage themselves in material activities and become attached. But the wise should not unsettle them, although these duties are inferior due to performers' lack of knowledge. Again, the wise should not unsettle them, not disturb them. So persons who are unknowledgeable falsely identify with gross material consciousness and are full of material designations. This body is a gift of material nature, and one who is too much attached to the bodily consciousness is called manda, or a lazy person without understanding of the spirit soul. Ignorant men think of the body as the self. They accept bodily connections with others as kinsmanship. The land in which the body is obtained is their object of worship, and they consider the formalities of religious rituals to be end in themselves. So it's just the formalities of religious rituals. So I have done this puja and I have done that kind of worship, and I went to temple or mosque or church or gurdwara for so many days, and I go every day and I do this. These are all religious rituals. It's a good. Nothing wrong with them, but how we are carrying out our activities, that is important. If going to the temple and just chatting over there, gossiping and trying to create some busy or business contacts, that's not the purpose of going to the temple or to any place of worship. Go to gurdwara or mosque or church. That's not the purpose. But we think that we just did these formalities and this is it. You don't need to do anything else. No. All these places of all these religious places, they should be the center of spiritual knowledge. So by going there, we learn that knowledge and we practice it. We implement this in our lives. That is the purpose. Not just visiting these places of worship. Social work, nationalism, and altruism are some of the activities for such materially designated persons. Under the spell of such designations, they're always busy in the material field. For them, spiritual realization is a myth, and so they are not interested. Those who are enlightened in spiritual life, however, should not try to agitate such materially engrossed persons. Better to prosecute one's own spiritual activities silently. Such bewildered persons may be engaged in such primary moral principles of life as nonviolence and similar materially benevolent work. But yes, these works are good for ignorant people who don't know anything better. So at least do some social reform, like live the lives of non-violence and other material benevolent work. But it's not the ultimate. And the person who is in knowledge should not disrupt them either, because they'll get bewildered. They don't have that Agyat Sukriti bank balance to come to devotional service. And many times, many times, such materially, they could be pious or they could be materially motivated people. They blame devotees that you don't work for the society. What have you done for the society? But the real service to the society is to bring them to Krishna consciousness. See, serving, feeding poor people, or helping them in hospital, or cleaning up the environment, they're all wonderful if done in the proper consciousness. Otherwise, even if we clean the environment, which in Kali Yuga it's not possible at all, even if we think everything is cleansed, all the rivers are flowing nicely, and no ozone problem, no pollution, no this, no that, how long it's going to last if the consciousness of people is not purified? And if consciousness of people is purified, if they've started to become Krishna conscious bhaktas, Then, as we studied in and earlier this chapter, that even the demigods, they'll all cooperate with men who do yajnas. So demigods control every department of the material universe. Everything is under their control. So if they are pleased because somebody has tried to become Krishna conscious, or somebody is doing yajna, then what is it that demigods cannot do? Krishna, obviously, by his only will he can do, but demigods still have to work, get things done. What is it that they cannot do? So we have to adopt the right method. That's all. But for those who are not on this path, they'll say, oh, this is just wastage of time. What can happen by your chanting? Well, what has happened by you physically going and feeding the poor and cleaning the rivers and the forests and the atmosphere? Nothing has happened. And in fact, it has become more polluted and more poor people we see on the streets. But this subtle logic, they do not understand. Why are poor people on the street, hungry and sick and injured or whatever? Because of the karma. I'm not saying that we should not help them. That's not, but coming to the logic. So when Krishna says by bhakti, it removes the karmic reactions. So if we engage them in bhakti, engaging is not that they have to do also. If they can, wonderful. Otherwise, hearing, Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Shravanam of Harinam. This is also bhakti. Even if they don't chant, they can hear. So this will please the Supreme Lord. It removes, it can negate the karmic reactions. But people in general don't understand all this. Men who are ignorant cannot appreciate activities in Krishna consciousness, and therefore Lord Krishna advises us not to disturb them and simply waste valuable time. For the devotees of the Lord, this is one line that Prabhupada writes, that is amazing. But the devotees of the Lord are more kind than the Lord because they understand the purpose of the Lord. And this is why devotees are very, very dear to the Lord. Devotees of the Lord are more kind than the Lord. Even Krishna is not as kind as the devotees are because they understand the purpose of the Lord. Purpose of the Lord is to rectify every conditioned soul and bring him back to the spiritual world. That's all his purpose. Consequently, they undertake all kinds of risks, even to the point of approaching ignorant man, to try to engage them in the acts of Krishna consciousness, which are absolutely necessary for the human being. So consequently, they undertake all kinds of risks. Well, the reason they take risk is also, yes, we understand this is what Krishna wants, but at the same time, we understand Krishna will protect us. So what's the harm in taking risk? And in this process, 18th chapter, Krishna says, one who distributes this knowledge to others is very dear to me. In the process, we become dear to Krishna, or dearer to Krishna. So there is no loss. But at the same time, we have to be very careful how to engage ignorant people. First of all, so they don't become offensive towards the devotees or towards Krishna, towards message of Bhagavad Gita. And they don't offensive also, and they don't start doing anything nonsense. So that balance is what is important. So yes, preaching has to go on, But at the same time, we don't have to make them offensive. And also, if they become offensive, they do something nonsense, they will go to hell. So this will defeat the whole purpose. Mai sarvani karmani sanyasya adhyatma chetasa nirashira nirmammo bhutva yudhyasva vigata jvara. Therefore, O Arjun, surrendering all your works unto me, with full knowledge of me, without desires for profit, with no claims to proprietorship, and free from lethargy, fight. Ultimately comes to his main purpose, fight, but fight in this kind of consciousness. This verse clearly indicates the purpose of the Bhagavad Gita. The Lord instructs that one has to become fully Krishna conscious to discharge duties as if in military discipline. So discipline has to be there in bhakti. It's not like I can do whatever whenever I want. No, some discipline has to be there. Such an injunction may make things a little difficult. Nevertheless, duties must be carried out with dependence on Krishna, because that is the constitutional position of the living entity. So duties must be carried out, but with dependence on Krishna. So Krishna clearly says, surrendering all your works unto me, not for you, you do it for me, with full knowledge of me, without desires for profit. Whether you win or lose, doesn't matter, do it. With no claims of proprietorship. Even if you win, do not think that because you have worked hard, so you won, so you can enjoy the kingdom. No. And if there is no such motivation, people these days work because of some motivation, material motivation. I'll get this and I'll get that. Otherwise, we'll not put in our full energy. But here Krishna says, free from lethargy. And don't be lazy. Fight. We have this FM radio station that works in our mind all the time. What's in it for me? WIIFM. So even if we don't see what's in it for me in doing some service for Krishna, just do our service. Of course, Arjuna is Kshatriya, so he had to fight. He was in the battlefield, he had to fight. We are not. We're not Kshatriyas. All we have to do is do our duty, but without any laziness, we have to do our duties. The living entity cannot be happy independent of the cooperation of the Supreme Lord, because the eternal constitutional position of the living entity is to become subordinate to the desires of the Lord. Arjuna was therefore ordered by Sri Krishna to fight, as if the Lord were his military commander. One has to sacrifice everything for the goodwill of the Supreme Lord, and at the same time, discharge prescribed duties without claiming proprietorship. Without claiming any proprietorship. Very, very difficult, because in material world, we all work with the completely opposite mentality. But material world is perverted reflection of the spiritual world. So all these talks which are preparing us for spiritual world. So we have to give up our material mentality and work in spiritual mentality. Arjuna did not have to consider the order of the Lord. He only had to execute his order. The Supreme Lord is the soul of all souls. Therefore, one who depends solely and wholly on the Supreme Soul, without personal consideration, or in other words, one who is fully Krishna conscious, is called Adhyatma Chetas. Nirashi means that one has to act on the order of the master, but should not expect fruitive results. So Nirashi, do not expect any fruitive results. The cashier may count millions of dollars for his employer, but he does not claim his cent for himself. Similarly, one has to realize that nothing in the world belongs to any individual person, but that everything belongs to the Supreme Lord. That is the real purport of Mai, or unto me. And when one acts in such Krishna consciousness, certainly he does not claim proprietorship over anything. This consciousness is called nirmama, or nothing is mine. And if there is any reluctance to execute such a stern order, which is without consideration of so-called kinsmen in the bodily relationship, that reluctance should be thrown off. In this way, one may become vigata jvara, or without feverish mentality or lethargy. So when we have fever, we become lazy. We cannot work. So give up this feverish mentality, vigata jvara, fever of material consciousness. Everyone, according to his quality and position, has a particular type of work to discharge. And all such duties may be discharged in Krishna consciousness, as described above. That will lead one to the path of liberation. And that will only lead. That's the only thing that will lead one to the path of liberation. So it is difficult. Yes, because we've been conditioned by Maya so many lives. Don't do anything which doesn't give you any profit. So even if we are doing some social service, it will ultimately give us some material profit. But profit could be going to the heavenly planets. By doing pious activities, one goes to heavenly planets, and there what he does, he's going to enjoy very, very big opulence, wonderful opulence and beauty. But this is not the purpose. So this verse, again, of course, all the verses of Bhagavad Gita are very important, but this is, as Prabhupada said, this is the purpose of Bhagavad Gita. Krishna says, so do this, and without any feverish mentality or lethargy or laziness. No, if I'm not going to get anything, why should I work? No, still work, because it pleases Krishna. So Krishna is trying every way possible to motivate Arjuna to fight. So anyways, we'll stop here. See anybody has any questions or comments?
Wonderful class, Maharaj.
Thank you, brother. Thank you.
Prabhuji, there is a health fair today, DC. There's a health fair in DC.
In temple?
Yeah, 12 to 4.